I want to thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity, and I also want to very much thank SAIS for even allowing us to share, but also in supporting all of our schools and what we're trying to accomplish. So very quickly, again, my name is Josh Clark. I am currently at Bodine School in Memphis, Tennessee, and we are a independent school that focuses on students with dyslexia. So we are a very specific school with a very specific mission. And what I'm going to talk about briefly today is some efforts that we have put together to try to take what we do at Bodine School in terms of our mission and our expertise in reading and translating it into a larger community and a larger impact. So there we go. All right, so real quick, the mission of Bodine School is to lead the Mid-South in teaching students with dyslexia to read and succeed. So we serve approximately 100 first through 8th grade dyslexic learners, and we do so under a transitional philosophy. So unlike most independent schools, we do not measure ourselves based on retention. We in fact want the opposite of retention. So kids stay with us on average for 2 to 3 years and then transition out into another independent school, and sometimes public school as well of their choice, which makes for a really interesting business model. And we're doing this remediation, transition through an Orton-Gillingham approach. And if you're not familiar with Orton-Gillingham, I refer to it as the Kleenex of dyslexia because it's an interchangeable term that a lot of folks use when talking about reading remediation. And at the most basic component, it takes language and literacy and breaks it down into its very core components and then introduces it in a way that's very systematic, very structured, and multisensory. So what we want to do is take these basic components of learning, engage the students, all their modalities of learning, the kinesthetic, the visual, and the auditory, so that we can literally take kids that aren't engineered to be readers and turn them into readers. So that is our goal. And to give you a little bit of context, I'm actually going to skip forward and I'll move back in a second. But we're doing this in the context of Memphis. And just to give you an idea, right now you would be more likely to survive the Titanic than be a proficient reader in Memphis public schools. All right? So right now in Memphis public schools in the 2014-2015 school year, 72.3% of 3rd through 8th graders were reading below grade level. All right? 72.3%. Right? That's an epidemic. I always talk about if 72.3% of Memphis City School students had the flu, we'd be on CNN, right? Because that would just be an absurd statistic. And yet we're sitting here and 72.3% cannot read. And I think everyone in this room knows what happens when we are producing that kind of environment and when what's going to happen to these kids in the long term if they don't develop these skills. And we also know that if they don't develop these skills by the end of 3rd grade, chances are they're not going to develop them, period, right? Which is a travesty for everyone involved, but just from an economic and social standpoint, as a community, we can't function in that way. So I'm going to move backwards real quick. So under that context, we started having a conversation amongst our own school community about what does it mean to be an independent school that values diversity. There was no one in my school community that I would go to who would tell me they didn't value diversity, right? They might do it at different levels, but not from parents to teachers to board members and certainly to students, no one would argue that they didn't care about diversity. And yet, we were sitting at a school, again, where we have a national epidemic or a regional epidemic in terms of reading, and we were serving, and still in our day program, serve predominantly upper middle class students, right? For a number of reasons, I'm sure many of you can sympathize with, from tuition, but also just our geographic location, transportation, all these things, right? So with that in mind, too, we also started this conversation about what does it mean to be an independent school that is community-minded, right? We don't want to be a bastion of privilege, right? We don't want to be this exclusive school that only a select few group of students get to participate in, because we also know that dyslexia does not know any zip code or socioeconomic status or race or ethnicity. 10 to 20% of the population is believed to be dyslexic, and that goes across all different populations and distinguishing factors in terms of how we think about our community. So we really had this conversation about what can we do. And so the first thing we talked about, as I'm sure many of you do, is this idea of financial aid, right? We're going to increase financial aid. We're going to raise more dollars, or we're going to build up our endowment so that we can do more in financial aid. And I think that's wonderful. I think that is a great path to diversify our population. But if we're at 100 kids and we were able to bring in enough money to support up to 110 kids, right, and be able to offer them more financial aid, that's wonderful. But I really felt like that was more of a a bomb shelter in a war zone, right? Serving 10 more kids when thousands upon thousands are illiterate is not going to be enough to make the change that we really, really want. So why we have increased our financial aid and we continue to try to strengthen that program, it is not the only pathway that we are taking. And so, skipping around real quick before I get into the details of what we're doing, to give you an idea of why we're in the situation that we're in terms of Memphis, and I'm sure a lot of you can sympathize in your communities. A lot of our kids are growing up in what I refer to as language deserts, right? And so I'm going to go through this real quickly. There are 12 books per child in middle-income neighborhoods compared with 1 book for every 300 children in low-income neighborhoods. By age 3, children from wealthier families have typically heard 30 million more words than children from low-income families. By the time children from low-income families enter kindergarten, they are typically 12 to 14 months below national norms in language and pre-reading skills, right? That's not Memphis-based, that's nationally, right? But in Memphis, we have a disproportionately high number of kids growing up in poverty, so we have a disproportionately high number of kids that are facing this. And so what I have discovered and what I've really argued is that what we're creating are functionally dyslexic kids. They're not neurologically dyslexic, so they're not born dyslexic. They don't have a genetic makeup that gives them this predisposition of a difficult time with reading, writing, and spelling. But they're growing up in environments that engineer their brains so that they're going to have a very difficult time learning to read. They're not walking into kindergarten with the prerequisite skills they need to become a competent reader. And at the same time, kind of running juxtaposed to all this, we also are producing teachers through our traditional teacher training programs, and not across the board, but the vast majority aren't preparing teachers to work with kids who aren't ready to learn to read. So it's kind of this perfect storm. So what we really argued at Bodine is that our expertise and the experience that we've developed in working with dyslexic kids, though it without a doubt could have an impact on the estimated 35,000 neurologically dyslexic kids in Memphis, that there is tens of thousands of more kids that we could really make a difference with if we were able to find a way to translate what we do. So what we're in the process of doing is creating a regional reading resource. And this is when it came back to that, what does diversity mean in an independent school? What does being community-minded mean in an independent school? We wanted to go beyond just bringing kids to our campus and think more of our campus as the center of a wheel that has spokes going throughout our entire community. So while we will always be an independent school serving dyslexic students, and that will always be the heart of our mission, we are working to become more of a lab school model, where folks from all over our region are coming to try to understand and to learn from us in terms of what does it mean to take a child who's not engineered to be a reader and turn him into one. And so we're doing this through partnerships with Teach for America and KIPP charter schools. It didn't take us long to learn that trying to walk in the front door of the public school system was not going to happen, no matter what. And so we formed these partnerships with these two very agile groups, very community-minded and reform-oriented groups. And we've been working with them now for about 2 years, and thanks to the grant from SAIS and then some other contributions, we've actually been able to really start and support our teacher training program. And the most important part of this for us that we've walked into over and over again, and this mentality that I constantly have to remind myself and those involved with it, is that we are not here to take what we do and force it upon anybody else. And nor are we taking the mentality of we have the solution, all you need to do is drink from our well and all problems will be solved. This is a true partnership. I've told the staff involved with this, and really our entire school, that this is more for us almost an anthropological study where we're working with these groups to figure out what do they need, how do we translate what we have and make it work in this new environment. Because at our school, we're working in classrooms of 10 or fewer kids. We are working with very engaged parents. We are not beholden to any state standards or state tests or anything like that, so we can literally build our whole day around remediation. So what we are focusing on is not just sharing our expertise, but learning from these two groups, what can we do to better translate? What do you need from us? And so this past summer, we brought in 30 teachers associated with Teach for America. Some are current core members, some are now alumni members. And we put them through a week of our Orton-Gillingham training. And now what we're doing throughout the course of this year, we actually have staff members that are going to 2 KIPP charter schools where these a smaller cohort of these folks are located, and we're spending at least 1 day a week on their campus doing observations, offering support, trying to help them truly implement this, but again, also figuring out and learning what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Are we emphasizing this particular piece too much? Or what does this look like when you are trying to bring it to 30 or 35 kids? What does that translation look like? And we're learning a ton. And I have to say that both Teach for America but especially these KIPP charter schools are being fantastic to us and really opening the doors and allowing us to really experiment. And what we hope is 24 months from now, actually by 18 months from now at this point, we're going to be at a point where we have a training program that we can then bring to scale and share. For us, this is very much a learning opportunity because I know just from being a teacher, being married to a teacher and working with teachers, often if it doesn't work right the first time, it's never going to work in terms of a new approach. So we're really spending time to try to make this a little more turnkey so that when we bring it to scale, we have a full-on program. And the reason we're, again, doing this is that we know that 90% of poor readers in first grade remain poor readers in fourth grade, and 74% remain deficient readers in ninth grade, right? And again, that's a national statistic. So what we're hoping is that by identifying what it is about our mission and our distinction that is translatable, that by focusing on that and sharing that with other folks, we're really going to be able to help start breaking this cycle in our city. And let me also say, as we go through this, there was some initial concerns when we started this initiative about what about the families that are paying full tuition right now? Is there a concern that we are veering too much from our mission, or that folks are going to be concerned that their dollars are going to support something else? And so we've had a lot of conversations, and one thing that we really talked about, and I think our families have been wonderful about, is fully embracing this as a part of who we are. We are looking right now in the earliest stages of a larger capital campaign that will allow us to expand our teacher training through new facilities. But every facility that we're looking at, every expansion we've talked about is mixed use. So it can be a teacher training center to house 150 teachers around round tables. But that evening it could also host 150 of our families for the school play or whatever the case may be. So it's very much been ingrained in who we are and what we do. And thus far, that's been one of the things that's been very successful for us. Is it's not this auxiliary program that happens on certain days of the week. It's a part of our mission. It's a part of who we are. And I think that has been, again, one of the big things that help with our translation. So we went in about 3 weeks ago and did pre-assessments with the kids we're working with at KIPP. And so in April or May, I hope to be able to tell you that when we go back and do post-assessments, that we've done some pretty tremendous, made some pretty much tremendous difference in what they're able to accomplish. So that's a quick overview of what we're doing. So thank you very much.